Originally, my review for Final Fantasy VI would have been made a few months from now, as I worked through the long list of games I have played for the Games of the Year series so far, but I felt compelled to jump the line with this game, due to the incredible experience I had playing it, which in a large way is a significant spoiler for the upcoming scores I will be discussing, but I suspect anyone who has played this game before knows just how special it is, and anyone who has not would benefit from knowing the same. As usual, I will be rating this game using 6 different categories: gameplay, story, art, game design, music, and vibe. The categories will be averaged at the end, at which point I will bring in the X Factor score, which can boost the overall score by up to 10 points. I apologize in advance for the length, but let us dive into what is frequently mentioned as one of the best Final Fantasy games of all time. The gameplay in Final Fantasy VI is incredibly close to perfect. In fact, the few critiques I can muster might be more reflective of my personal approach than the game itself. Let's start with the positives. Combat is classic, active time battle executed to near perfection, a formula the Final Fantasy series had already honed across several prior entries. The progression curve feels smooth, with well-placed difficulty spikes that keep things engaging. At various points your party is split, or you're forced to continue without certain members, pushing you to rely on characters you may have previously overlooked. This design not only encourages strategic flexibility, but also breathes new life into the huge 14-character cast, each of whom feels mechanically distinct and narratively relevant. No small feat. Replayability is another standout strength. In my playthrough, I naturally gravitated towards a core team of 4 to 6 characters, occasionally rotating others in. That alone invites future replays with entirely different lineups, and because each character plays so differently, it genuinely reshapes the entire experience. As for critiques, they're minor and arguably subjective. One is that espers, or basically summons, didn't play a central role in my playthrough. Unlike previous entries where I relied on them heavily, I found most espers unnecessary, even in boss battles. I would have liked to see them integrated more meaningfully into combat strategy, rather than serving primarily as vehicles for spell acquisition. Another contrast, not a flaw, but worth noting, is the absence of a job system like Final Fantasy V. While Final Fantasy VI leans into character-specific abilities and uses espers to offer a touch of customization, the lack of full role swapping may feel limiting if you enjoyed V's open-ended class design. That said, the shift also made each character more unique, so it really comes down to taste. Apples versus oranges. Overall, I'm giving gameplay a 92. It's a masterclass in turn-based design with only the smallest of knocks for how underutilized the summon system felt in my run. But for most players, this won't detract from what is otherwise a genre-defining experience. The story of Final Fantasy VI is an emotional roller coaster, a masterful blend of humor, tragedy, hope, and heartbreak. There are moments of levity and charm, but far more that reach into your chest, rip your heart out, and frisbee chuck it out the nearest window. For the 5% of you watching this who haven't played it yet, here's a spoiler-light summary. Long ago, a catastrophic conflict known as the War of the Magi saw the magical espers clash with humanity. In its wake, the espers vanished into a separate realm, and magic faded from the world. 1,000 years later, the Gastalian Empire uncovers espers once more and begins exploiting them to power deadly magitech technology. Thus begins a globe-spanning conquest, and your ragtag band of rebels rise to stop them. From here forward, major spoilers ahead. Skip to the score if you want to avoid them. At first glance, the plot seems straightforward, but once the journey begins in earnest, it becomes clear how deep, emotional, and expertly told this story really is. It wrecked me, over and over again. One of the most powerful moments for me personally was Cayenne's introduction. Watching him lose his kingdom, his wife, and his son, all within minutes of meeting him, was gut-wrenching. The scene where he desperately pulls his child from the bed nearly broke me. As a father to a 1-year-old, I felt Cayenne's despair bleed through the screen. And that's just one moment. I could easily deep dive into 20 more, but to keep this video under 3 hours, here's a condensed list of standout emotional gut punches. Kefka poisoning Doma. Locke rescuing Celeste. Terra becoming a foster mother. Kefka murdering General Leo. Celeste's attempted suicide after losing Cid. This is the definitive version storytelling-wise. Fight me, by the way. Sabine holds up an entire collapsing house. Kefka slaughters espers wholesale. The entire opera sequence. Gao's father rejecting him. Kefka kicks the corpse of Emperor Gasol. Shadow's whole tragic backstory. Gestal's fake olive branch betrayal, Locke and Rachel's final goodbye, Kefka straight up wins, and the entire multi-phase final battle against Kefka. There are more, so many more, but those are the ones seared into my memory. Ultimately, this game delivers one of the most powerful and dynamic stories I've experienced in years. It's the benchmark for how to mix character-driven narratives with epic world-shifting stakes. I'm giving the story a 95. The only reason I'm not going higher is a slight personal bias. I'm not usually a fan of evil for evil's sake villains, but Kefka is the best version of that archetype. A deranged clown god whose madness feels terrifyingly real, so it's a very small deduction. The artistic design of Final Fantasy VI is nothing short of stunning. From the very first moment, the iconic image of Magitek knights trudging through a snow-covered field, the game immediately sets a somber, dramatic tone. It's a quiet, pixelated promise. This story will be heavier, deeper, and more human. One unfortunate side effect of playing the Pixel Remaster version is that it masks just how much of a visual leap Final Fantasy VI was when compared to its predecessors. Final Fantasies IV, V, and VI released on the SNES, and the graphical evolution between each is extremely noticeable on the original hardware. The jump to Final Fantasy VI felt like the peak of 16-bit artistry. Richer animations, more detailed sprites, expressive environments, all coming together in harmony. The airship design is fantastic, sleek yet full of personality. The character sprites are expressive and beautifully animated, each one radiating identity despite their limited resolution. The Opera House sequence, in particular, is a masterclass in visual storytelling, with lighting, staging, and sprite work that evoke emotion without needing a single line of dialogue. Even Kefka's animations and mannerisms, his manic laughter, twitchy movements, and clownish walk, translate impressively well in 2D. He somehow feels more unhinged because he's pixelated, like the medium enhances his chaos. The enemy and boss designs are stellar across the board, but as with many Final Fantasy titles, the real showstopper is the final battle. Kefka's ascension, the Tower of God motif, climbing through layers of warped angelic grotesquerie to confront him, is visually breathtaking. It's disturbing, majestic, horrifying, and beautiful all at once. It feels wrong in the best possible way, like you've stumbled into a divine nightmare that dares to be elegant. Square's visual team consistently raised the bar throughout the 16-bit era, and Final Fantasy VI is their crowning achievement. Having just played through the first 6 games over the past few months, I've loved seeing the visual evolution, but Final Fantasy VI stands tall as a masterpiece of sprite-based artistry. I will be scoring it a 97, a nearly perfect visual experience that blends classic pixel charm with emotional weight, dramatic storytelling, and unforgettable art direction. Of all the major categories in Final Fantasy VI, level design is perhaps the least exceptional. Not bad by any means, but when stacked against the consistently stellar quality of the rest of the game, it stands more in the realm of very good rather than great. To be clear, Final Fantasy has always had a strong track record when it comes to dungeons and world layout, and this entry is no exception. There are some standout examples. The Magitek Research Facility, for instance, offers a refreshing twist with its industrial aesthetic and clever use of pipelines to navigate between sections. It's visually unique and mechanically interesting, especially for a mid-game dungeon. Another high point is the implementation of multi-party puzzles, where progression relies on swapping between groups to bypass roadblocks. This mechanic not only breaks the linear dungeon mold, but also encourages, and occasionally forces you, to engage with your full roster. It's a creative solution that subtly pushes players to experiment with lesser used characters. That said, this system felt underutilized. The multi-party mechanic appears only sporadically, being seen in the final dungeon and a handful of scripted sections. Perhaps Square was testing the waters and opted to play it safe, which is understandable given the experimental nature of the idea, but it left me wanting more. And no, Final Fantasy V's Twin Tower section doesn't count. Those parties acted independently, not interdependently. Another area where Final Fantasy VI falls slightly short is optional content and dungeon variety. The game lacks the kind of bonus dungeons or ultra-challenging post-game content that would become staples in later entries. While I fully recognize the technical limitations of the SNES cartridge, and Square was already pushing it to the limit, I still found myself wishing for 1 or 2 extra endgame areas that surpassed even the final battle in difficulty or complexity. In short, Final Fantasy VI's level design is solid, occasionally innovative, but not quite groundbreaking, especially when compared to the heights it achieved with its story, gameplay, or visual design. I will be giving it a score of 80 for level design. Well crafted, with moments of brilliance, but missing the extra push I personally would have liked to have seen. The music of Final Fantasy VI is, without exaggeration, some of the best not only in the Final Fantasy series, but in the entire history of video games. Nobuo Uematsu and the team at Square didn't just score this game, they elevated it to something transcendent. Every single scene, every single emotional beat, every moment of tension or triumph is heightened by the music. It is the soul of the game. Right from the opening sequence, you are immersed in a world of melancholy and majesty. The haunting organ chords layered over a somber mechanical march set the tone instantly. This is going to be different. That theme alone tells you, without words, to buckle up. One of the most brilliant touches is that every playable character has their own theme, a musical fingerprint that reflects their personality, backstory, and emotional arc. It's not just a gimmick, it's storytelling through sound. Terra's theme balances hope and sorrow, as if she's caught between two worlds, which of course she is. Celeste's theme radiates pain and fragile beauty, especially in the famous opera sequence and her time of despair. Hyan's theme embodies duty, tradition, and tragic loss. Setzer's theme is bold, theatrical, and dramatic, just like the man himself. Realm's theme dances with childlike innocence. And Shadow's theme is minimal, mysterious, and lonely, the perfect theme for a mercenary haunted by his past. Honestly, I could fill this entire video with all 60 tracks and still not do it complete justice. If you've never listened to it in isolation, I implore you, go experience it. Even outside the context of the game, it stands tall as a musical masterpiece. But there are two pieces I must spotlight, both tied to the game's central antagonist. Kefka's theme is a masterclass in musical characterization. What starts as a twisted carnival waltz, whimsical, almost silly, slowly reveals its true nature, a creeping madness that mirrors Kefka's descent into nihilism. His theme feels like a corrupted lullaby, laughing at you while the world burns. He's chaos personified, the living embodiment of the phrases, "Watch this, because I can," and "Some men just want to watch the world burn." And of course, Dancing Mad, the final boss theme, is an operatic tour de force. It's over 17 minutes long, divided into 4 epic movements, each one building tension and scale as you ascend the godlike tower to confront Kefka himself. And just when you think it can't go further, the final movement returns to the organ motif from the opening theme, bringing the musical journey full circle in a moment that is both chilling and poetic. I spent an entire week writing just this section, looping the full soundtrack the whole time, and not once did I feel fatigued, not once did I skip a track. I can't find a single flaw. This soundtrack isn't just great, it's perfect. The score? 100. No notes. Uematsu, you are a legend. As for the vibe of Final Fantasy VI, or as I like to call it, how the game felt, it was like watching a beautifully orchestrated train wreck unfold in slow motion. You're there for the calm before the crash, the moment of impact, and the haunting aftermath, and somehow, through all the destruction and despair, you can't look away. This is one of the most emotionally resonant games I have ever played as an adult, and honestly, I'm glad I didn't experience it younger. The historical allusions to fascist empires, the creeping dread of authoritarianism, and Kefka's descent into pure nihilism hit much harder with the perspective and emotional weight that adulthood brings. Everything in this game is firing on all cylinders. The character development is among the best I've seen in this medium. The music amplifies every beat to near operatic levels. The story is devastating, bold, and unforgettable. The gameplay offers tight combat with loads of replay value. The game made me feel everything. Sorrow, joy, dread, triumph, heartbreak, and even awe. I honestly can't think of a single emotion it didn't evoke at one point or another. It may sound odd at first, but as I tried to find a comparison, one kept coming to mind: Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. If you've played Final Fantasy VI and seen those films, the parallels may be hard to ignore. Both stories feature grand-scale tragedy, high-stakes action, an unforgettable villain that people love to hate, and a theme of resilience in the face of overwhelming loss. While some earlier games had dared to let the villain succeed, it was still incredibly rare at the time, and yet Final Fantasy VI goes there. Kefka wins. He doesn't almost win, he succeeds. He shatters the world and becomes a god, ruling over a broken, hopeless landscape. And unlike Endgame, there's no time travel, no undo button. The people who died, they stay dead. The world remains ruined. And still, the heroes rise. Not to fix the past, but to face it. They gather their strength, their grief, and their resolve, and they fight back. Not for a reset, but for justice. This game felt amazing. From the first step in the snow to the final credits, I was captivated. It's the kind of experience that lingers with you long after the screen fades to black, and I will return to it someday to re-experience its glory, its sorrow, and its triumph. I am giving it a 96 for the vibe. Near perfect. My only minor critique is that I wish the game had given me more natural reasons to rotate the full cast more often, but emotionally, it hit every note. After tallying the 6 core categories, Final Fantasy VI lands at an average score of 93.33, and this is where things get a little weird. Normally, this is the point where I would count in the X factor, that indescribable magic, that something special that pushes a game beyond mechanics, systems, and scores. And for Final Fantasy VI, this is the easiest 10 out of 10 X factor I've ever given. Now, if we calculate that in, we're looking at a final score of 103.33 out of 100, which is, admittedly, a little problematic from a math perspective, but makes perfect sense emotionally. So here's what I'll do. The core score is a 93. With the X factor, it's 103. Take whichever one speaks to you, or throw both out and go with your own gut. That's part of the fun. Hearing your perspective, whether it aligns or completely diverges from mine. This game astounded me. As someone who didn't start their Final Fantasy journey until Final Fantasy IX, I never expected one of my all-time favorites would emerge from the earlier 16-bit entries. I always assumed that honor would go to Final Fantasy VII first. Editing ham here, I just started playing Final Fantasy VII on my live playthroughs, and oh boy. But that's a story for another day. If you've made it this far in the review, thank you. Truly. I appreciate you taking the time to hear my thoughts, and I'd love to hear yours in return. Whether you agree, disagree, or just want to share your own memories with this masterpiece. As always, for the love of the game. Please like and subscribe for more videos.